Tilda, the latest event in the great triggering of 2016 has arrived. And of all things that feminists and social justice types are now being triggered by on the internet, it is the dictionary itself. Yes, that thing that so many of them will instantly leap to and say, "Oh, you just need to look up the dictionary definition of feminism," whenever anyone points out anything bad that a feminist or proponent of social justice does. But now the dictionary is sexist, apparently. Let's find out more, shall we? So this entire tale of nonsense began when some guy called Michael Oman Reagan started thumbing through a dictionary one day and stumbled across the word rabid. And he noticed that the example given was a rabid feminist. And this was apparently very problematic for him, so he decided to tweet at Oxford Words that maybe they should consider changing that. To further add weight to what he believed was a decent case, he then went on to find a few other words that he deems to have problematic and sexist examples, such as the example for shrill, the rising shrill of a woman's voice, and psyche. I will never really fathom the female psyche. And as you can see, these are clearly sexist examples because they are so very derogatory towards women, in his mind anyway. And his apparent justification for demanding that these sexist examples be changed is that this dictionary is the standard preloaded dictionary in Apple products, so iPhones, iPads, Mac computers, so on and so forth. And this wouldn't normally be too much of an issue. One nutjob on the internet complaining about absolutely nothing? What's new? But apparently this has become a thing that has now been termed Dictionary Gate, because every little thing that happens on the internet needs to be suffixed with the word gate, apparently. So the Twitter feminists got their little hate mob together, as they normally do, and descended upon the Oxford Dictionary with all of their hate mail and letters and emails and comments and so on and so forth, which resulted in the Oxford Dictionary doing the most stupid thing that it could have done and actually capitulating to their demands, issuing the statement, "We apologize for the offenses that these comments caused. The example sentences we use are taken from a huge variety of different sources and do not represent the views or opinions of Oxford University Press. That said, we are now reviewing the example sentence for rabid to ensure that it reflects current usage. Other examples raised by Mr. Oman Reagan will also be reviewed." So after seeing all of this, I thought, well, hell, I'm going to go through this guy's examples that he's given, I'm going to look through them, and then I'll go into the dictionary and see if I can find some examples from the other side. But before I do that, I'd just like to look at one of the examples that this guy gave that really tickled my pickle. Because this one really amused me. Doctor. A person who holds the highest university degree. He was made a Doctor of Divinity, to which Michael Amon Reagan has said, not surprised to find that the usage example of doctor as holder of a PhD is a he. Now, there's something very amusing about this, given that Mr. Amon Reagan here claims to be an anthropologist of space science and social movements, currently PhDing. Doesn't say what he's studying, but he's going for a PhD in something, so he's clearly somewhat intelligent. And yet doesn't actually know that a Doctor of Divinity is not a PhD. A Doctor of Divinity is an honorary degree. The title is bestowed to individuals who have devoted their lives to theological pursuits or community betterment. In comparison, a traditional doctor program in divinity, such as a Doctor of Philosophy in Divinity, can provide scholars with advanced knowledge and expertise in a particular aspect of religious study. Still don't get it yet? A Doctor of Divinity is not someone who has actually done a PhD. Someone who actually has a doctorate in divinity would be a Doctor of Philosophy in Divinity. Their main title would be Doctor of Philosophy, not Doctor in Divinity. Hey, look, you can even go to themonastery.org and you can buy for $32.99 your very own Doctor of Divinity certificate. Even in circles where this certificate will be taken seriously, such as the University of Life Church, it's not even an academic qualification, it's simply a title, and only useful in religious institutions. This is in no way a PhD. To reiterate again, if you wanted this to be an actual legitimate doctorate, you would be becoming a doctor of philosophy or a doctor of theology. But yeah, sure, the dictionary's totally showing a PhD holder as being a he, absolutely. It's not showing a con man pretending to be a doctor, or someone who's just been given an honorary title because of their life work. Anyway, I just found that one example particularly amusing. Someone who claims to be an anthropologist and yet doesn't understand humans. Well, when you're complaining about the example sentences in dictionaries, I do have to question your intelligence. Anyway, moving on to the actual fun part now. I too decided to go ahead and cherry pick some words out of the dictionary that have some problematic and sexist examples. So, as per their point earlier about this being the standard dictionary for Apple products, I fired up the old Apple laptop, opened the dictionary program, and started rummaging around. So I managed to find a suitably gender-neutral word, the word rude. Offensive, impolite, or ill-mannered. And the example is, she had been rude to her boss. So women can be rude to their bosses. Wonderful. However, there is a second example. It's rude to ask a lady her age. So there's a second example there. Defending women, protecting their honor, and all of that good stuff. And then the second offering, referring to a taboo subject such as sex in a way considered improper and offensive. He made a rude gesture. Oh, so men make rude gestures. There's no defense of men in that one, but there you go. That's a reasonably gender egalitarian one. Men can be rude and women can be rude. All good so far. Let's move on. The word stupid was another one that had a reasonably gender egalitarian approach to it. Lacking intelligence or common sense. I was stupid enough to think she was perfect. Now, we don't know if the I in that sentence is male or female, but it's someone chastising themselves for thinking too highly of a woman. That's actually quite complimentary towards women, that people just by default, or through some other means, would just assume that a woman is perfect. That's quite complimentary. Next, dazed and unable to think clearly. Apprehension was numbing her brain and making her stupid. So we have a woman here who's not actually being described as stupid. There's something happening to her that's making her not think quite clearly. That's not actually an indictment of the woman in that situation. It's an indictment of the thing that's impairing her somehow. And then the third one here, informal, used to express exasperation or boredom. She told him to stop messing with his stupid painting. So the third example there is a woman berating a man because she thinks what he is doing is stupid. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So, while we actually have both men and women being used in potentially all of the examples here, actually all of the examples are quite complimentary towards women. Someone thought a woman was perfect and chastising themselves for thinking otherwise. A woman is being confounded or in some other way negatively affected by something else, as in she isn't actually stupid, it's something else that's causing it. And then in the third example, a woman is in a position of superiority over a man, believing herself to be more important than he is, because she can just berate what he's doing. Well, if I was someone who wanted to read far too deep into these things because I care about trivialities, I could make a reasonable case that this a particular example is unflattering towards men to some degree, but I think we can do better. Let's consider the word brute, shall we? A savagely violent person or animal. He was a cold-blooded brute. Well, that is the only gendered example there. He was a cold-blooded brute. So it's nice to know that men are considered savage, violent animals by the dictionary. Can I cry sexism yet? Probably not. Let's keep going. The word stab. Stab features both men and women in its example, so let's pay some close attention to this. To thrust a knife or other pointed weapon into someone so as to wound or kill. The example, he stabbed him in the stomach. So we have stab, where the example is a man attempting to murder another man. The example that features women is making a thrusting gesture or movement at something with a pointed object. She stabbed at the earth with the fork. She stabbed the air with her forefinger. So the women in the example are doing constructive things. One of the women is stabbing the earth with a fork, perhaps to plant some seeds or to remove some weedly plants. And the second example is of a woman gesticulating, presumably whilst giving an impassioned speech. So when men stab, it's because they want to hurt, maim, or kill people. When women stab, it's because they're being nurturing and caring or emotional and impassioned about something. Is this proof of some casual misandry in the dictionary? Let's keep going. Callous. Showing or having an insensitive and cruel disregard for others. His callous comments about the murder made me shiver. So we have a man being portrayed as insensitive and cruel when it comes to other people. Nothing else going on there. If just the mention of a gender with something that could potentially be negative in the same sentence as them is proof of sexism, then we have clear evidence here that the Oxford Dictionary is sexist against men. But let's see if there's any more examples. Monster. An imaginary creature that is typically large, ugly, and frightening. An inhumanly cruel or wicked person. He was an unfeeling, treacherous monster. And then a more humorous use, a person, typically a child who is rude or badly behaved. Christopher is only a year old, but already he is a little monster. I don't think I really need to add anything else here. Here is a word with negative connotations, and in both examples, the negative example is with a male. I'm sure there's a few more examples I can dig up. Let's go to the good old feminist favourite, rape. The crime committed by a man of forcing another person to have sexual intercourse with him without their consent and against their will, especially by the threat or use of violence against them. The examples: he denied 2 charges of attempted rape. He had committed at least 2 rapes. And the other definition: the abduction of a woman, especially for the purpose of having sexual intercourse with her. Well done, Oxford Dictionary. Rape is a crime exclusively committed by men. At least they don't have a gender-specific target for the victim, thus acknowledging that men can be the victims of rape as well. But they do not acknowledge that women can perpetrate rape as well as men. It is a category of sexual assault known as forced to penetrate. Unless, of course, Oxford Dictionary, you think that a man being forced to have sex with a woman under duress or the threat of violence is somehow not rape, or is somehow something that cannot or does not happen. And of course we have another wonderful example for the verb of a man to force another person to have sexual intercourse with him without their consent and against their will, especially by the threat or use of violence against them. The woman was raped at knife point. Well, there you go. You've got an example now where women are the victim and men are the perpetrators. I don't hear a single feminist campaigning to have this definition updated to acknowledge female perpetrators of rape or male victims of rape. What a shocker that they are totally silent about this one. Things must certainly be feeling a little bit awkward for Mr. Michael Amon Reagan and all of the internet feminists who have been protesting the OED right about now, because in the space of a few minutes I have found more words with more examples that are more derogatory of men than you have of women. If we want to play a petty point scoring match, you've lost. But you know what? I don't care. Because words need example sentences to give them context for people. Sometimes the context will use a male example, sometimes the context will use a female example. Sometimes there is reasonable justification for this, other times there might not be. Take, for example, the word shrill, and the shrill rising of women's voices. Generally, women's voices have a higher tenor and a higher pitch than men's voices. Therefore, they are more likely to be shrill when they are raised. They don't have to be, but they are more likely to be. It is a completely reasonable generalized statement. There's no reason for you to go rabid when you don't like the example. If you want to help combat sexism when it comes to the English lexicon, maybe you should start with the dictionary definitions of sexist and sexism, both of which reference prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination typically against women, with examples of male perpetrators and female victims. Maybe these words should be the first words that you amend, to remove the typically against women part, so that they too can be gender neutral and egalitarian. I'd love to see some feminists get behind this initiative to remove the typically against women part from the definitions of sexist and sexism, but I won't hold my breath. Because the last time I held my breath waiting for a feminist to do something that didn't exclusively benefit women, I turned a little bit of a strange colour, and I'm still dealing with that problem to this day.